What if I told you that one of Chevrolet's most legendary engines was also one of its most controversial? The 396 turbojet, also known as the L78, wasn't just a high-performance beast. It was a corporate headache, a legal liability, and a symbol of an era that nearly tore GM apart. So what makes this engine both iconic and infamous? Stick around as we uncover the shocking truth behind Chevrolet's deadliest engine. Chevrolet was facing mounting pressure in the mid-1960s. Over at Chrysler, the Hemi engine had already become a legend in its own right, dominating drag strips and cementing its reputation in NASCAR. GM executives knew that Chrysler had raised the bar for performance engines, and Chevrolet seemed to be lagging behind with its existing lineup. To stay competitive, especially in the National Hot Rod Association's Superstock class, Chevrolet needed something revolutionary. But creating a new engine wasn't just about beating Chrysler on the track, it was about reclaiming Chevrolet's street credibility, targeting a generation of young, performance-hungry drivers. The foundation for the L78 was the legendary 409 engine. But this new design wasn't just a newer version of its predecessor. Engineers completely reimagined the big block concept, strengthening the engine block itself to handle extreme levels of power without sacrificing durability. They introduced enhanced cooling channels, ensuring the L78 could survive sustained high performance without overheating. A critical upgrade for both the street use and racing. Cylinder heads were redesigned as well, improving airflow and maximizing the engine's output at every RPM range. The result? Officially, Chevrolet claimed the L78 396 turbojet delivered 425 horsepower. On paper, that number looked impressive, but it was just the tip of the iceberg. Independent dyno tests conducted by performance shops routinely showed the engine generating closer to 500 horsepower, especially when paired with aftermarket tuning. Chevrolet had intentionally downplayed the engine's true capability, a strategy that may have been designed to keep their corporate overlords unaware of how wild the L78 really was, or perhaps to mislead insurance companies trying to calculate premiums for these cars. At its core, this engine wasn't just about acceleration. It was a shot across the bow to anyone daring to compete with GM's engineers in the muscle car era. On the racetrack, the L78 was untouchable, shattering records and outmuscling competitors in NHRA Superstock racing. This wasn't just an engine, it was a weapon. Its ability to push high RPMs without catastrophic failure gave it a distinct edge over rival power plants. And for anyone daring to underestimate it, the L78's acceleration on the strip was a very loud, very direct reminder of what Chevrolet's engineers were capable of. But it wasn't only the track where the L78 left its mark. On the streets, its availability in production cars like the Chevelle SS 396 meant that everyday enthusiasts could experience supercar-level power firsthand. This wasn't just another big block, it was rebranding Chevrolet's image from a maker of dependable cars to a serious contender in the muscle car wars. Before the L78, the Hemi had the muscle car world in a chokehold. After it, Chrysler had a true competitor breathing down its neck. For Chevrolet, the L78 was more than just an engineering achievement. It represented a major cultural shift within the company. No longer content to play it safe, Chevrolet was now ready to fight for its slice of the performance market. And while the 396 turbojet's street legal status thrilled drivers and racers alike, it wasn't long before trouble began to brew. Behind the engine's glory and accolades, corporate unease, and even external pressures were beginning to take shape. Internal policies, insurance headaches, and the harsh realities of the late 1960s were about to turn Chevrolet's masterpiece into one of its most controversial creations. The L78 was a triumph in engineering and performance, but its greatest strength soon became its most glaring flaw. At its peak, the engine was at the center of Chevrolet's success story. In 1966, Bill "Grumpy" Jenkins piloted his Nova equipped with the L78 to staggering win records, proving the engine's dominance on the drag strip. On the streets, it was equally revered. The SS 396 package, particularly in the Chevelle, turned heads everywhere it went. This wasn't just a car, it was a declaration of power. Chevrolet capitalized on the engine's mystique, and the numbers reflected the hype. Over 86,000 Chevelle were sold with the SS 396 option in 1969 alone. For many enthusiasts, owning an L78-powered car meant they didn't just drive a machine, they controlled a phenomenon. But success came with a cost. Chevrolet hadn't fully anticipated just how far drivers would push the L78. This engine was a marvel on paper, but dangerous in the wrong hands. Young, inexperienced drivers craved its power, but didn't always understand its limits. The L78's high revving capabilities and precise tuning demands made it less forgiving than other engines. Pushing it to its breaking point often meant catastrophic engine failure, or worse, accidents. Insurance companies took notice and swiftly categorized L78-equipped cars as one of the highest risks on the road. Drivers under 25 faced premiums so steep that, for many, the dream of owning an L78 car evaporated the moment they asked for a quote. What had been envisioned as a car for muscle-loving youth became unattainable for the audience it was designed to win over. The trouble didn't end there. Behind the scenes, GM's strict policies caused headaches for Chevrolet. Corporate rules prohibited engines larger than 400 cubic inches in midsize cars. Rules designed to maintain a clear distinction between family vehicles and street racers. Chevrolet managed to sidestep these restrictions by keeping the L78 at 396 cubic inches, just under the limit. It was a clever workaround, but not without consequences. Internally, debates raged between engineers eager to chase performance and executives wary of tarnishing GM's mainstream image. For all its glory, the L78 became a lightning rod within GM itself, highlighting the company's growing discomfort with balancing performance credibility against corporate responsibility. At the same time, external forces were reshaping the automotive industry. The Vietnam War cast a long shadow over American society, triggering significant cultural and economic shifts. The counterculture movement, often critical of consumerism and excess, grew increasingly vocal against muscle cars as symbols of outdated values. This cultural pushback, combined with the L78's single-digit fuel economy and its reliance on leaded gas, began to tarnish its appeal. What once symbolized raw power and freedom now seemed out of step with the rising concerns over sustainability and moderation. And then there was the government. California's move to enact the first statewide exhaust emission standards in 1966 signaled the beginning of a crackdown. Across the country, regulators were turning their attention toward high-compression engines like the L78. With its need for leaded fuel and its emissions output, it became an easy target for criticism. But the most damning evidence wasn't environmental, it was human. Between 1967 and 1969, GM's legal team tracked 37 high-profile fatalities tied to accidents involving L78-equipped cars. Safety concerns compounded by the alarming accident rate painted a grim picture, leading both law enforcement and lawmakers to focus on the broader risks associated with ultra-high-performance vehicles. The looming Clean Air Act of 1970 only sealed the L78's fate. By setting new federal emission standards, the act made it nearly impossible to justify producing engines with such high compression ratios. Chevrolet faced an undeniable reality. The L78, despite its brilliance, wasn't sustainable in this new era. The regulations brought with them a shift in priorities. If Chevrolet wanted to keep its performance image alive, it had to evolve. Chevrolet's response was strategic. Over time, its focus shifted towards smaller block engines like the Z28 small block. The Z28 was high-revving, offered respectable performance, and fit better with growing emission standards. The company also leaned on limited production options like COPO cars, steering clear of mass-market engines that might attract further regulatory scrutiny. This pivot allowed Chevrolet to stay competitive in the performance market, even as the days of untamed big blocks like the L78 came to an end. The L78 wasn't merely an engine, it was a reflection of an era defined by bold ambition and mounting caution. In the 1960s, muscle cars represented the height of automotive freedom, and the L78 embodied that spirit with raw, untamed power. Yet it also highlighted the growing pressures of regulation, safety concerns, and shifting cultural attitudes. Today, its legacy endures not only as a marvel of engineering, but as a reminder of when automakers relentlessly pushed boundaries. Could a modern equivalent find similar success, or has the automotive world moved too far from that fearless mentality? The L78's roar still echoes.